So here's a topic that never, ever, ever seems to get old. And that is games won't work on the PlayStation 4. Okay, so you've heard my views about the PlayStation 3, and you know how I feel about when I say that it is possibly the worst retro console ever made. When it gets its time, which technically it's now. It's 2 generations back. We're in the PlayStation 5. That means PlayStation 4 has happened. PlayStation 3 is technically, as far as I can tell, as far as I feel, it's retro. It's a 20-year-old system, right? Yeah, at least 15 something. I'm not going to claim to remember exactly when that came out, but I'll tell you that I did a video way back when I first picked up my PlayStation 4, and I think I picked it up when it was already like 2 years in or something like that, and it was a while ago. Look, I've said it, okay? The PlayStation 3, my biggest problem is all these updates and patches and things like that that have been done that, quite frankly, make it so that years from now, that system, when you go back, when you look at it, when you think about it, it is going to be the worst system in terms of retro games. None of those games are going to be what you remember, because all the day one patches and everything like that, there's going to come a time when they simply won't work and the games cannot stand on their own. And then I come across this piece of information. Now this is coming from WCCFtech.com, okay? Here's what I come to find out. And this kind of blew me away, but it's exactly part of the problem that drove me towards PC. Now check this out. Last month, well-known hacker and modder Lance McDonald suggested that in a few years, PlayStation 4 players might not be able to play PlayStation 4 games offline when the CMOS battery inside the console dies. Fast forward a couple weeks, and Twitter user has now proved that this is the case. Twitter user Forrest of Forrest Reviews decided to purchase a PlayStation 4 Slim model to test whether or not PlayStation 4 games really wouldn't work if the CMOS battery had died. I went out and picked up a PlayStation 4 Slim in order to take it apart and remove the battery inside of it, Forrest writes. The test is to determine what will happen when the CMOS battery goes bad, and pretending the PlayStation 4 servers are offline. By replicating this issue, we hope to have some record of whether or not this is a true problem. As it turns out, removing the battery inside of Sony's console prevents people from playing physical and digital games without an active internet connection. And the worst part about this is that inevitably, these batteries are going to die. Look, guys, this is part of the reason that I left consoles. It's part of the reason that I just went to the PC and gave up on the whole thing. I'm already editing on the PC, I'm doing YouTube videos, I'm doing things like that, so the PC is kind of where I'm sitting all the time anyway. And quite frankly, now with stuff like this, it doesn't make me happy to think that the PlayStation 4 is as dead as a Pokemon game. Remember Pokemon Gold? Remember that game? Remember how the battery died and it no longer worked? Remember Pokemon Silver? Remember how that game, the battery died and that clock no longer worked and you couldn't save the game? It just wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. Remember Pokemon Crystal? This is not an original cart. This right here is a reproduction. I have the original downstairs. I don't know why I didn't grab it. But look, these games very much represent the same problem that I am now seeing in a PlayStation 4, and that bothers me to no end. To no end. For multiple reasons. Guys, it should bother you that in a couple of years, it is inevitable that that battery will die. It will die. And it should bother you that when that battery dies, your games will no longer function. And I'm not talking about just digital games. I'm not talking about only online. I'm talking about physical games. I'm talking about you bought the game. You own the game. You put the game on your shelf. And then you took the game off your shelf, put it in your PlayStation, and they shut the network down because it's 10 years from now, and they're already on the PlayStation 7 or whatever the fuck. And because we're on the PlayStation 7, there's no reason, just like the PlayStation 3 market is going down, there's no reason to have a PlayStation 4 network up, so they shut that bitch down. It's gone. Get it out of here. It's gone. Bye-bye. That network is gone. Your physical games no longer work because it won't connect to the internet that way, and your digital games no longer work. You now have a very expensive paperweight, making it once again a horrible, horrible retro system. Retro systems are kind of important. For anybody that believes that your games are an art, for anybody that believes that your games were any kind of investment, for anybody that believes that your games were anything more than Rat Trap, the board game, where you just set it up and you played it and it was fun and you left it behind. And yeah, I used to play Rat Trap when I was a kid, though I never played it. I just set it up and watched the trap go. You know what, guys? That's your video games now. That is the era that we live in. It's the reason I moved to the PC. Look, guys, it became apparent to me in PlayStation 3 that the consoles were no longer the things that I grew up with. They weren't. They were different monsters. They were no longer the same animal. And it killed it for me. This wasn't a PlayStation 2, and I wasn't trying to be an old man. It just wasn't. There was something different the entire time I played PlayStation 3. Then the PlayStation 4 comes out. Excuse me, damn. The PlayStation 4 comes out. And I'm like, well, okay. I gave it a little bit of time. I wasn't too happy with the games that I saw coming out. And then finally, some games came out that I said, that's it. That's finally it. That's next gen. I'm going to buy it right now. And I went out, got a special PlayStation 4, a Batman PlayStation 4, and I said, I'm in the game. Let's do it. I'm in the game. Started playing PlayStation 4. And that same feeling crept up. That this wasn't a PlayStation 2 anymore. It wasn't a console. This was a computer. I was already playing on a computer, but a limited computer that like stopped me from doing the things I wanted to do. Like, I want to talk about video games. Okay? I have a Facebook and I have a Twitter where I can go on and I can talk about video games. And I have a YouTube where I can go on and talk about video games. But I can't do it on my PlayStation. At least not well. It's kind of crippled. It doesn't, like I can go get a keyboard for it, and I did that. But then this is what started hitting me. I went and I got a keyboard, and I even got a mouse for my PlayStation so I could play certain games. And I was like, why am I doing this? Like, I wanted to talk to people in the Fandom Night group, or in a couple of the chat channels that I have on PlayStation Party. So I went and I got a keyboard. I could just use Discord or something on the computer and play my game. And it's right there. It's right there. It's built. It's right there. I'm supposed to use it. It's part of the fucking system. But not on a console. Consoles were what they were because they were different. They were separate from that market. They were not computers. Until I argue the PlayStation 3. It was different. These were computers. And because of this different feeling, I started losing what kept me in the consoles. What made me feel for so long was important about consoles. That they were different. They were a different kind of convenience. You didn't have to think about it. You just picked up the game, put it in the box, pushed the thing in, or hit the button and it closed the tray, and it just played, and you knew. that the game you were playing, you could go back to at any time and play the game. If I'm going to play KOTOR on the Xbox, I just pick it up and I put it in and I play it. That's it. I don't have to think about it. That's what made it special. It's what made it different than somebody on the PC who would install the game and then they'd have to patch the game and then they'd have to kind of look at it sometimes. And sometimes there would be game-breaking bugs that the company had already moved on and they weren't interested in that game before, and the mod community would have to come in and fix the game to make it work. That was PC. Now it's not. Now it's consoles. And there was another thing that kept me away from PC, was that I hated the idea that at some point, like, these games were all digital. I didn't own anything physical, and at some point that was going to bite me in the ass. At some point I was going to come across a time when the games just no longer worked. When whatever service I was on had gone down, or something had happened, or my PC had broke, and that was the end of it. And I couldn't just buy a new PC and get those games back at the time. They were removing things like disk drives, which is quite normal now, actually, for a computer not to have a disk drive. Everything's digital. I was a physical kind of person. I believed in games' longevity. I believed in the idea that my Nintendo still worked the same way that it did when I was a kid, and that there wasn't necessarily nostalgia tied to it. When a game was good, a game was good. It didn't have to be modded or patched or changed in order to be what I remembered it being. But now it does. And for that matter, I don't even own the actual physical game anymore. The idea that my physical games on my shelf for my PlayStation 4 are actually just paperweights waiting to become paperweights. Guys, I've talked about it on this channel a couple of times. Yes, I made a drastic move to PC. And it's shit like this that put me there. We'll get out of here.
I have spoken. Take what you will from it.